Hello and welcome to Kids on the Fairway. I am Steve Christain. This is a new channel we're starting, Kids on the Fairway. You can find it on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all the special media places. So you know the drill, the whole subscribe, hit the bell, all that type of stuff, so that you can continue to see the content that I'm going to put out. The whole idea of this show is to be probably about a 45-minute show, a lot of different segments. Cut away to some practice things, maybe. I'd say that you'll see a lot of disc golf course reviews, me throwing, maybe if I'm lucky, I get some pros to play with me as well. This particular segment that we're starting out with is called 50 After 50. I'm over 50, 53 as a matter of fact. I've been playing since 2010. And I have a local pro here, Matthew Splain, here in Western North Carolina, who is going to break down my current form, and then he's going to make subtle changes. I have pretty good form already. Most of my friends will tell you, if you talk to them without me, that I'm kind of known for having pretty smooth, buttery form. Really good in the woods, and I have a lot of confidence in my game. So, you know, I'm a really good player. I'm not a great player, but I'm a really good player, and I can score, you know, in the leagues or tournaments in the MP40 division is what I play. Certainly not at the top of that division. On a good day, I'm more in the middle to the, maybe, you know, we'll say top 20 or something. But Matthew is going to teach me how to make a couple changes. And the reason that I was looking for the changes was really not all about the distance. It was just a good segment to break into, because it's always cool for anybody to see changes that will improve your distance. I actually have two things that were a problem for me. For me, simply the distance. You know, on a good day, I'm a 400 player, but really averaging 375, 380, and that was a good controlled pull for me. But with my frame, long arms, long legs, anybody will tell you I should be able to throw further. So he's going to break down my form, and then we're going to make those changes. And the other thing, sorry, that I forgot to point out, is that I've always had difficulty getting the disc, the trajectory to get up as high as I want it to get that full flight. I've always known that me throwing flat at like this 6 to 8 foot level, if I just got it up in the air for a lot longer, of course my distance would improve, because I have never really had an issue about the speed of throwing the disc. It's more about just getting it elevated and getting it to do more work up in the air. So we'll have Matthew come in here in a little bit, and I'll let him tell you his story. He's doing a lot of training here in the area through the Western North Carolina Disc Golf Club, and I would recommend him. I highly recommend him. I don't know anybody that has not used Matthew and has made subtle changes with great results. And I can say that because this is kind of a prequel. We've already done some of the work already. So without that, without anything else to be said about that, we'll break off for a second, and then I'll have Matthew come in. Talk to you soon. Or anything. They're all the same for me, so if you haven't learned already in the rest of the club, I throw truths and lots of them. Oh. I feel like I'm being critiqued. All right, I can probably... Well, is it on now?
You're still live. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm just thinking, you know, who's talking first, who's doing whatever.
Who's on first?
Yeah, who's on first?
What's on second?
Never mind.
Well,
The moment's gone.
well, we can do it. I'm just saying, you know, who's talking. The moment's gone.
Oh, dang it.
Great. You'll just have to get that long walk of ours. That's just gonna, I'll put some music behind it.
Yeah, all this.
All right. So the first thing I'm noticing, Steve, is that you're like Zach Melton. You throw with the wrong hand. So
Of course.
you need to
first
you need to
response with
fix
all
that
of these.
problem first. No, I'm completely kidding. But the biggest problem I'm noticing is with your feet. So when you're going through your X step, your first plan is good, but when you go through your second step, your back foot is turning, almost making like an L shape when you go through. And what that's doing is causing your hips to turn and open up prematurely. And when you go through your last step, your hips are already open. And you can't, like when you're trying to throw through, your hips won't want to try to spin around and close the way they're supposed to. And you're having to use a lot more of your upper body when you throw. So the way you fix that is when you go through your step, like go through your X step, keep the first step the way you've been doing it, but slide your right foot and try to make it parallel and find like the comfort range of where you can do it. You should be able to, when you do it, you should be able to stand and balance yourself. If you stay in this position, you should be able to balance yourself without any hesitation, whether you be making
that's a
an
pretty
I.
important part right there.
Yeah, so either where that's making an I or being like there, wherever that range is to wherever you're comfortable with doing is where you need to be.
So
Because
it's
some
like
people
it's
will,
like an athletic stance at that point
Yeah.
is what you're talking about.
the entire
Okay.
X step is an athletic stance.
Okay.
And it's got like this step has a narrow range of acceptance. The main thing is though, is just finding where you can feel the most athletic in this stance without losing your balance completely. Most people,
It's not very far
yeah,
for me.
some people can only have to do what's called an I, which is perfectly fine, because what that's doing is still keeping your hips in line, but you can stay upright that way. But the farther away you can go from an I, the better, because then you can shift your weight easier doing that. And then your last step is fine too. It's just the second step is the issue. We need to get to where it's parallel, both your feet are parallel in line facing away from the target.
All right.
Keeping your hips in line too. Because the only time, it's like your hips don't really like move in this direction too much until you're coming through the shot and actually spinning around. If I also do it right-handed.
That's interesting because I've always felt like it's always kind of turning at the same time.
Yeah, it does.
But
It turns
not.
in the same time to a degree, but when it turns, I'm going to do this right-handed. It's like when it turns is when you're actually like coming through the shot and kind of all comes around at one time. But when you're actually going through it, it kind of all stays in the same spot. It doesn't really shift or move too much.
Okay.
The only
I
thing
feel
that's
like
really
the way I've been doing it for years is I feel like it's all doing everything really slowly. And it's comfortable and it does a really good job of me being precise with my throw. But you're right, I never really feel like it's almost by accident where I hit that point, and then it's probably me, it's from old ball golf form where it's the same way. You're just keeping everything just kind of stuck like that, you know, and then when you hit here and then there's that follow through, I just haven't figured out, and I think it could be right. Footwork seems like it's probably going to be a start.
It's like that's.
What did I do that before? So noticeable.
So in terms of what we worked on last time, it's a lot better in terms of the footwork. I can actually go on to something else that's going on to help you get a little bit more distance. We're going to go to the upper body now.
Okay.
And it's actually, what I want to work with you on is going to be what you're doing with your other arm, your offhand.
So, I just taught myself to do that a while ago.
So what's going on with your offhand? A lot of people, when they're being taught disc golf, is to keep this arm very close to your body, which you are keeping it pretty close to the body. The only problem is it's not doing anything. It's just staying out here. It's still tight. It's still making you spin quick, but it's not really doing anything. A lot of your bigger throwers in the sport, your arm, your offhand acts both as an active and a passive movement in the throw. And what goes on is that when they go through the X step and when you start pulling in, to pull this arm inwards before this comes through.
Oh, okay.
Because what that's going to happen is it's going to help move this part of your hip forward and move everything forward. It's going to force it to come.
As I'm coming through, you really want me to this, because I remember this Ezra talk of like pushing your arm down in there.
Pushing your arm down, almost like you're trying to go into your pocket on the other side. To kind of show you as like a righty doing it, it'll look a little something like this.
Okay, so you are moving it.
Yeah,
you're keeping
you are moving it, but you're not moving it very quick.
Yeah.
It's just it's a quick move it to here, and then it doesn't do anything from there.
Okay.
Until it comes up for the follow through.
Yeah, because I've actually been teaching people mostly with that Anheuser shot when people see how well I do it. For me, that was keeping my arm down there on purpose, because what a lot of, I won't call them inexperienced, even advanced players are doing the same thing, where everything that they're doing back this way, they're doing this, you know, and so it's all this timing with their arms, but when you want to perform that shot, this one's actually counterbalancing you. It's actually making it even harder to even get there.
Yeah.
So I like that. So that makes a little bit more sense. It's really more about just getting it out of the way.
When you have it both up here, especially for an Anheuser, what it's doing is creating drag when you have that counterbalance. And you're not going to be able to get as much rotation and much spin on the disc as you would if you were to keep everything, this arm down low, well, for your case, down low, and really get over or get it on the angle you want to.
Huh. Well, we'll see what that even feels like. That's just like so weird.
Yeah. It's just
I mean, I know you're like with it, like I'm so focused on being down there that I'm stuck down there at the moment, you know? I wasn't expecting you to give me something hard to do. I was like, he's gonna tell me to turn my head.
Nope.
So I can really still start kind of, right? Because I gave up this whole point of ever touching the disc. For me, that's what, like, when I was touching the disc, it was really affecting me a lot. You know, I know some players do it, but they usually don't do it for very long.
Yeah.
But that's why I started, like, I'll do it with a putter, but with every other disc, I'm really used to just not touching it at all.
Yeah.
Which for me is a good thing.
I mean, the fact of either touching or not touching it is very just person by person. But even when you are throwing, you're creating what's called that stack, because you're starting the disc back here, or in your case, it's back here, on this back hip, keeping everything backwards until you start coming forward, which is what you want to do. Even if you don't have the disc touching the disc, or how some people do it, it still works the same way. So you're still doing everything the way you'd want to, you're just doing it your own way.
So I can leave my arm here, like I normally do, but as I'm starting to come through here, like I really need to, like, this needs to follow. Is that correct?
This arm is actually going to go before your arm comes forward. So like when you start coming this in, bring this arm in, and it's going to force this arm to come in already.
Oh, wow. That's an X. That's kind of an X. Oh boy, that's going to be interesting. Like I said, you had to make it uncomfortable, Matt. You son of a bitch, Matt. I hate it when you teach me something that works right the fuck away. Okay, you know what? That helps with that trajectory issue that I had. Because as soon as you taught me the new piece, then, jeez, I'll tell it to the camera. Matt's the devil. And
Hi.
basically what he's taught me, so for the longest time, well, I had a couple of hitches really, but actually they were taught to me by other people. And the first one was this whole turning my foot all the way around, which was just, you know, opening or closing the hips. What is it?
It's opening the hips prematurely.
Yeah. And so then he changed my X step so that I would come through parallel like this to the best that I can until I'm used to it. And what that would happen is that my timing was based on me being in this position. And so when I created this, then what was happening is when I would come through, instead of delivering it straight, I was delivering over here because in my head it's so many seconds to get from here to there. And now he's telling me if I take my arm that I spent so much time putting in one position to kind of force it. It's almost, I feel like it's almost a little bit of an X. And by doing that, you're right. I mean, just everything's out of the way.
Yep.
Like I just barely threw that disc.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna try a couple more. It's too many things to think of. Oh my God. Do you know, I have never thrown a mid-range that far, Matt. That's so far.
That is pretty far.
That's the truth.
I know.
Oh my God. All right, well, I'll do, now that I'm super excited. Oh man. Now, how much of that do you do on controlled shots? Tight woods, you're still feeling that? Are you just doing it less because it's not as, you know, is it gradient as to how hard you're throwing?
Yes.
It is. So if you're doing a 300-foot straight shot in the woods with a mid, like I would throw a truth, then you're not really getting in there because you're not throwing as hard. So it's just more gentle.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot more gentle for more controlled shots. If the only time I will not do that is if I am throwing a standstill putter shot inside of like 100, like inside of 200 feet, maybe in 150 feet.
Right.
200, I might do it a little bit just to get a little bit more pop on it if there's more room.
That's an area that, you know, I've told you before, you know, I've been a forehand approach guy.
Yeah.
For years. I want to see the target, and it's probably been about maybe the last 6 months where I forced myself to just start doing more backhand approaches because I saw the failure when I was playing leagues and tournaments where it was such an obvious decision to backhand, but I just wasn't practicing it, and so it was bad. But I feel that same way because with me, when I do standstill, which is what I prefer because I feel that's the most control, like that 150, even 200-foot shot for me, just as just a putter shot up. When I come through, this is where my arm is right now. And so I feel that when I come through, even when I have it down, it's very unreliable whether I'm, like, if I'm gonna do it straight. And so maybe really that is I kind of need to be here in just a shorter shot.
Yep.
So I may have to give that some thought. Oh man. Right away, you just gotta, right away, Matt. It's just stupid. Now that thing just sunk though. But look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, so here's the thing. Every time I watch you, or just a much more, you know, professional player, just what more you have in the bag, like as a regular basis, that's the one thing that I've told you before. I never could figure out how people were getting the disc up into the air. And that's a lot of it. Like I just never had the potential because my body would never be where I wanted it to be. So, well, now I'm fixed. Now what do we do?
I will say this. The biggest thing when it comes to adjusting any form is to take it very slow and it's usually just very micro adjustments to people's form to make the biggest differences. As we worked with Steve on, with just move with foot placement on his X step on his cross, just fixing that got him even more distance, and just moving his offhand in when he's going through his X step, just doing little stuff like that can make the biggest differences in throwing farther or more accurately or whatever you're trying to accomplish.
Well, and I'd like to make a note as well that the other difference is that if you've been playing for 1 year or 2 years, you're not going to get quick results like this. I've been playing since 2010. I already have pretty good form, and I'm confident in all those things that make me throw good shots already. He's just refining them to being so much better, you know, than they probably ever would have been. I never would have been able to do some of the shots that I just did being stuck with that. But Matt's absolutely right. It's something you have to take into the field. We have, what, 2-3 weeks in between our 2 practices? Was it a couple weeks maybe?
About 2 to 3 weeks.
About 2 to 3 weeks. And for me, the hardest thing was I really didn't have time to get out to the field. I was just out filming a lot of content. So really my time of trying to learn was during leagues, during some of these you know, rounds where I'm just filming for content. And it's frustrating. I mean, I will definitely tell you more than anything, if you want to learn something better, you need to spend your time practicing and not playing, because it's just really tough to learn, especially when you're competing for, you know, the $18 at league.
Or in my case, playing for trying to win B tiers and some even compete at A tiers and higher divisions. It's doing those, it's grinding is how you're going to get better. And your feelings are going to get hurt. You are going to get hurt practicing in terms of when you try to fix something, it might not be there right away. You just got to stick with it and really emphasize on what you're trying to accomplish. It will come, I promise, if you put in the work. That's the biggest thing.
Let's do some throws.
Yeah.
I might even throw drivers.
I'm going to throw one just for fun.
Okay, as promised, I'm back. Everybody's left my field, my private field here in Western North Carolina, which is where I live now. So I wanted to go into a little bit greater detail as to what I was talking about. So as I mentioned before, I had really smooth form and I was pretty happy with it. And you know, for me, if I had a bad day, it was just because things in my body weren't working well. My core maybe was weak that day. I was too tired. I had a bunch of garbage from work or something. But in general, I was super happy with my form. It felt good. But I didn't have the distance. And I also couldn't really get the trajectory up. So, as I was saying before, doing this for the last 5 weeks has really taken that buttery smooth form and just chopped it. And it's because if you haven't made a form change, even a very small one, it's like, you know, it's a piece of the chain and it just takes all these links. And when you take one link and you change it to a different link, every time you get to that link, you don't have that forward smooth motion from one movement to another. And that's what's going on. So when I just came back from Minnesota and I was there, I was actually there another video, but I was there to design a disc golf course. And so in the process of a week, I probably threw 600 to 700 discs. And I don't have an issue with that. I'm fortunate I don't really get tired from throwing discs. But I will tell you, as soon as I played a course where I had to hit lines, and I spent a full day at Blue Ribbon Pines, which is the epitome of having to throw great lines, it was terrible. Terrible to the point where I actually just told myself I couldn't even practice all the two form changes. I could commit to the 1 foot change, and that would guide me along. And that's kind of what I did for the rest of the time I was there, because it's just so deflating. I mean, I've been playing a long time, and you'll find this too. If you've been playing for 10 or 15 years and you want to make form change, that's what you're going to notice. It is a step backwards. It's just that you have to keep telling yourself that once you learn that part, that will add the value to your game. So I wanted to mention that because it's a big thing, especially when people watch videos and they are trying to learn something new and maybe take it out into the field. Here's the thing. It only works if you spend the time in the field. And I didn't have that time. I've been stressed, between where I live in Minnesota and just a bunch of garbage that, life that happens. And the other part was I was stressing out pretty hard and spending a week getting a golf course design put in place, at least on paper or on UDisc. And because of that, really all of my working on the game has been with that overthought of hitting a line. And I love to play courses in the woods. So what would happen is when I went back to Minnesota, if I went to a course where it was fairly open, I felt like I was doing great. And I was like, well, this is great. I see the distance, I see the change, I'm pretty happy with everything. And then as soon as I went to another course and I actually had to hit lines through an entire course, I felt, kind of like a rec player. Excuse me. And so I wanted to stress on that. If you want to make changes in your game, you really have to come to the field. And a lot of people will tell you, well, if you throw in the field all day, you don't have any targets, you don't have anything, it's fine. I get that. You're not going to the field. Well, you can. You absolutely can go to the field and you can put things out there and you can hit targets. You can practice your 200-foot up shots, your whatever, forehand rollers, whatever it is you're doing. You can get a little bit more value. But the big complaint is, from most people, is that if you go to the field, you don't really have, you don't have lines to hit. You're just kind of throwing out in the open. I will tell you, spend your time in the field doing it, especially if you're making a form change, because what you get out of it is you get confidence. It is so hard to change something in your form and then go and try to fix all that while you're on the course, especially if they're courses that you've been playing at. So I came back home, went to my favorite course here, League, which is Richmond Hill, and it's absolutely, it's a mountain course, and every single shot you have to hit a line. And honestly, I just played there yesterday, League, with random doubles, and I felt bad for my doubles partner because I just couldn't be in sync with the things that I had changed. It only works in the field. So we'll turn it around after this, and I'll show you. I'll try to get it down to my foot level and maybe in front of me at the same time because I don't have somebody filming with me today. And I'll try to, at a minimum, if I throw a really good throw, maybe I'll point to the camera and you can see what that form is. If I go back to the old form, I'll kind of point it out. But I'm just going to throw a few after this, and then we'll probably call it pretty good. And I think the next one after this, we'll be back with Matt. And hopefully he can maybe help me out with maybe another little pointer that will maybe not make me suffer as hard. And we'll take it from there. Next. Those shots actually kind of, they didn't tweak my back, but they engaged different.
Yep.
All right, we're back. This is Steve with Kids on the Fairway. I have got Matthew Splain, local pro here in Western North Carolina. And we are in our, what is this, third time?
Third time.
This is our third session and where I've made the changes that he has recommended before. And so he is going to take a look to see what kind of progress I've made in, was that a couple weeks now?
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks.
Yeah, it's been a couple weeks. And those two changes that I had made were that I was crossing my feet more in a parallel fashion, my pivot foot in the back, which was engaging my hips to turn better. And the other part was that Matthew had taught me to drive my hand into the pocket to further more of that twist and not have this kind of dead arm. And so I've been doing that for a while, and I won't lie to you, it's been really uncomfortable. I have not been throwing great rounds unless I kind of stopped thinking about it. Mm-hmm. So today, he's gonna tell me a couple other things, and we'll do a few throws.
Okay.
It's up to you.
So what's been making it uncomfortable for this exercise of moving your arm into basically this extra pocket? What's been like, what's caused it? What is the most uncomfortable part of it?
The most uncomfortable part about it, well, there's two things, and the first part was driving in there made me feel like I was leaning back. Okay. And so I wasn't even worried about like that I was hyzering. It was that it was almost kind of hurting my back to do that. Like I felt like I wasn't getting that forward progress. Mm-hmm. And then the other thing was that I felt like everything was so much faster. And I had just gotten so used to everything nice and slow and smooth and feeling all that timing, and all of a sudden it just felt like I could do my back steps nice and slow like normal, but then to engage everything, it was like I'm going 10 miles an hour, and then all of a sudden it feels like it's 50 miles an hour.
I got you. So for that first part, with it feeling like your weight's going backwards when you're trying to throw your shot, when you use your opposite hand to try to go into that pocket, what you do, instead of just kind of, most people just try to just throw this forward and not really think about what it's doing. And what happens when you do that sometimes is that it throws your weight backwards, back towards your heels.
Okay.
So the way you get around that is when you get this arm going forward is to kind of drive it forward and drive your weight forward with it. That way the disc is coming out and your weight's going with your throw, and it's helping accelerate the disc when you do that.
Okay, see, that makes more sense, because for me to drive it into the pocket, that wasn't forward for me.
Yeah.
That was like down at this angle. Mm-hmm. So I was either tipping back or I was feeling like I was going forward. See, I didn't catch on to that.
When they say drive it into the pocket, it's more of driving your hand in the direction of that pocket. Like if you were really driving into your actual pocket, that's where your weight gets shifted backwards. Because then you're twisting this way and then your weight's going, instead of straight this way, it's going in this direction.
Right.
In your case. For a righty, it's going to be the exact opposite. But when you just drive it in that direction, you're driving on a straight line towards where you're trying to throw the disc, instead of tore out and back away from it. Now, the other part with that, where you said that it feels sped up, it is supposed to feel sped up. Because what's happening when you go to throw this shot, it's like when you go to throw a shot and you move this arm in, this shoulder turns, which causes your lead arm to create this brace and create this power, go into this power pocket quicker than you naturally anticipate. And when by the time the disc is coming out of your hands, your hand is still accelerating at this point. So the disc is going to want to come out quicker, and everything is going to feel sped up. So it's just going to be something to kind of get used to, because I know you go really slow when you throw a lot of your shots.
Exactly.
So it's just going to be a little bit of a different pace. But it's something that you can work into.
So it's just something that's going to take me time.
Yeah, it's going to take some time to get used to.
Did you catch that? It's going to take time. For everybody out there that thinks that these things get fixed in 5 minutes, it's an absolute lie. I've been doing it for 5 weeks, and I feel like I've gained, like, not distance-wise, but knowledge-wise, I feel like, I'm still in the very beginning part of it.
You're not at the very beginning. You're a lot farther ahead than most people. I would not be teaching a beginner like the stuff that I'm teaching you. Maybe the first lesson we did were the feet, like in terms of the X step of having when you had your foot turn the opposite had your
Right.
heel drops away. That's more entry level stuff in terms of like how your feet go in the X step. But everything else we worked on since then is more like advanced level, more advanced technique to help gain distance.
So in 12 years of playing, nobody ever told me to stop doing the most novice thing, was to turn my foot the right way. I don't know how I played so well with my foot being like that.
I mean, guys like Thomas Gilbert get away with it, which is,
okay.
he's like the only exception to that. Almost everybody else can't really do that very well. But there's plenty of people that do everything parallel or close to parallel. Chris Dickerson is a great example of doing that. His feet, even though his feet are moving so quick when he throws, they're still like perfectly in sync with each other when they throw. Except for maybe when he's throwing like kind of bigger distance, but even still, for him, when he's throwing, if that foot gets back, his foot is still in line, because then he's just turning his butt to the target. That's a whole different technique.
Oh, okay.
So he's still getting everything ending in line of where it needs to be. But yeah, normally for most people, when they get for how it was for you at the beginning, when you get like this, it's hard to become very consistent doing that. But
yeah, I never felt like it was never an issue getting my final plant foot where it needed to be. Mm-hmm. Trajectory was never, well, maybe not the trajectory, but the line for sure. Like, I never had any issues about that. And I didn't even feel like it took me a long time to learn to do that because of where my foot was. Mm-hmm. But obviously the biggest noticeable thing is now that we've made the changes, it's not even so much the distance, it's just that, like you said, everything's faster. And I noticed it right away. Like when I left and went out of state for a while and I was throwing the big distance stuff, boy, I noticed how fast it was coming out of my hand. Mm-hmm. And I'm not the only one. Like, my buddies were like, Jesus Christ, what's going on here, man? You're just throwing this thing to death. I'm like, I'm really not. And just like, I think I just put my feet in the right place.
You got everything synced up.
Yeah. And not perfect, just better.
Yeah.
Better. Well, should we throw a few?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. See if I can. I'm kind of tired already.
One more thing. We talked a little bit what I'm about to say off camera. Your head.
My head, yeah, I know. I'm back and forth on it.
It's some of the orthos one trying to come over still. So just kind of keep your head upright when you throw. That's going to help out quite a bit.
Well, I'll try a couple of them, yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah, everything goes smoother when you put it in the right place.
Exactly.
The head thing's weird. It's not even a bad habit. It's something that happens when I get tired, mm-hmm. Or when I'm trying to learn something new.
Exactly.
Because it's just, I think that's what it is. Like, I just really want to hit it, and that first thing is like I just get down into that position, which is just awful for disc golf.
Yeah, you don't want to be tight when you throw, because that's what you're doing is like you want to just get into it and everyone just gets tight.
Right.
When they do that. You cannot be tight throwing a disc golf shot. I do not care what anybody says.
Right.
If you are tight throwing a disc golf shot, you are restricting distance potential.
Nobody in disc golf uses the term tight shot, dude.
No, it's smooth and loose. Like, I'm going to throw one for y'all right quick. Not the greatest example, but
yeah, buzzes don't seem to go as far as truth is what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, that's fair.
Go ahead, try another one. I know you're. You haven't thrown one in 20 minutes.
No.
Way better.
That's a lot better.
A lot better. Now we talked about this a little bit too, you know, the head thing for sure. And I've always been aware of that because people have told me that a lot. But it's usually they're telling me that because I've gotten really tired, I played too much disc golf or something like that. And that's kind of it's almost, it's a trigger actually, to be quite honest, to tell me that I'm doing things wrong or that I'm too tired to even be playing anymore. But before we were doing this, we were working on that a little bit. And keeping your head up, I mean, there's a little bit of turn, but if you notice with Matt, probably can't tell unless I put him right on the side, is that the only time he really even looks down a little bit is that last little engagement, and it's just because it's that last bit of power you have. I don't think you could hold your head up if you wanted to be honest, you know, it's like it's that last little bit and you just kind of go down, but I was like down, like I was looking at the ground.
Yep.
Because somebody told me to look down years ago.
Yeah, you shouldn't be really looking down ever. The only time you can really kind of look down, so I know some people when they go to throw, they kind of turn their head away from their target, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But in some cases, they kind of look down because where their release point is, they sometimes kind of come lower. They'll look a little bit down because their hand's a little bit lower, and that's fine. That's a little different. But a lot of people just do this.
Yeah, right.
They just look straight down, and they have their upper back down, their shoulders are down, and that causes all sorts of other problems. A lot of inconsistencies, probably a lot of hyzers.
Yeah, exactly.
Low hyzers, but that's about it.
Well, I mean, let's. I mean, as long as we're sitting here talking about the topic, you know, obviously you're not thinking a lot about where your head is because you know you put your head in that position a lot, and with a good throw, it's probably staying where it is. Is there time where putting your head in a position, or is there right? Because a lot of people look back. I'm a perfect look backer. Like I literally, like when I see people, top professionals, looking at that disc almost the whole time, and then it's just that quick turn, and like that's not me. For me, I know that if I put my feet where they're supposed to be and I reach the end of the pad where I want, I know I'm throwing the line. So I come back. So I guess the question is, if you come back and you turn, you know, what's the recommendation for that? Is it still just as straight as you can? Is it a little bit of an angle? Are you just watching maybe where your disc is? Does anybody have thoughts about where you're looking to keep your head in the right place in the reach back?
See, what I was taught from playing just other sports throughout most of my life is that you want to keep your head as still as possible regardless of where it's going in different movements.
Oh, okay.
Because I played collegiate tennis growing up. I played collegiate tennis. And playing in tennis, you want to keep your head in the same position, and you're not really focusing on what your racket's doing. If anything, the only time you'll really like look down a little bit is if you're tracking the ball, if it's moving slow. So you pretty much want to keep your head in the same position as long as you can, even if you have like a longer reach back, or if you have like a quick reach back, you still want to keep your head in the same general locations when you start the throw. It's pretty much going to start and finish in the same location. Maybe finish up a little bit more unless your head's already kind of high. Because when you finish your throw, you want to kind of finish in this position, kind of like the trophy pose for disc golfers with the perfect follow through. That's about the only time your head really should move, and it comes up a little bit. Your head hardly ever should change direction during your throw.
All right.
The only time I could say you might want to change your position of where your head is if you're throwing a shot you're not very comfortable with very low. And what I mean by that is, for most people, very low screaming hyzers down here. Even like guys like Nate Sexton will do this. They'll kind of put their body over the disc and their head's down a little lower than normal.
Sure.
And because they're trying to use their body to dictate the angle. And by keeping their head down that way, it helps keep their body over the disc and drive the disc on that angle. That's about the only time you should really change your head angle.
That is the same thing for me. Just ridiculous steep hyzer for me. Like if I want that where, you know, I'm throwing like a stiletto or something over a tree, where I want that, I find on that same thing, it's like I really come down low like that because that's setting up all of this motion to still finish, you know, at such a hyzer.
Yeah. Like even like I'll do the same thing when I'm throwing like something, when I'm starting a lot lower, my head will be down, but when I come up, it finishes still at that position where my head's still high and I can still follow through properly. Like even when I throw this shot on like this, I'm gonna try throwing a really high hyzer right quick.
That's a high hyzer.
My head will start low because what I'm doing is dictating, instead of being able to pull straight across, where I'd be trying to throw any kind of flat shot or kind of like medium height shot, since I'm throwing higher, I bring it lower, so I have to bit my head lower, make sure I'm getting where I want to, and then I'm pulling up through my power pocket and coming up and trying to throw higher than my normal plane that I normally throw on. Which naturally when I do that and I follow through, my head's gonna follow. That's like the only time, like throwing big highs is like the only time you should really change your head in any type of way.
Another thing that I actually get out of that was, you know, not even regarding what we're actually working on today, but the whole head movement thing. And this is actually how I figured out, and when you pointed it out, you know, it was like, oh yeah. Like it wasn't, oh really, what am I doing? You know, like I'm very aware of it. And I'll tell you why I'm aware of it, because the same thing plays with putting. I know for me, particularly, like when I'm putting a shot, if there's a whole bunch of movement, if my head's moving up and down like that, and that's typically what happens when you get tired or you know, you're just uncomfortable with the putt.
Yep.
That is all the same problems.
Yep.
So you're right. I mean, it's something it's something that really doesn't get talked about.
Nope.
Very much. But you're right. Your head kind of needs to be that focus point, and you need to get everything else to work around it. It needs to be fairly minimal with your head. Yeah. To help you instead of hurt you, really.
Yep. So let me talk about putting with head position right quick. So little tidbit for everybody. When you focus on like where your head position is when you putt, you want your head to be in line, like looking directly at where you're trying to go. If your head is down from where you're trying to go, say if you're trying to aim dead center pole and your head's down a little bit, instead of being upright looking at it, if it's down like this, you're gonna hit cage, or gonna be low on the pole or somewhere lower than where you anticipate. If your head's rocking when you go to putt like this typically, you're typically gonna putt a little higher than normal, or you're gonna have a lot more inconsistencies of your exact release. So you might have some come out lower, you might have some come out higher, but it's gonna be on a more vertical basis. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for, vertical basis. But it's gonna be harder to get that same consistent release point. If your head's going all over, I've never really seen this, but if your head's like shifting side to side, which is kind of bizarre, you're gonna have more left to right movement. So basically just keep your head still when you putt and make sure your head's like looking in the direction that you want to be putting at. You'll make more putts that way.
No, I agree 100%. It was told to me years ago when I was just having a terrible round at an 8-tier of all things. And luckily for me, the guy running that tournament was Cale LaVisca. and I know him pretty well. And that was actually his pointer to me, was that when I was putting, he's like, you need to be looking up at the basket. Like, you're not going to hit the basket if you're not keeping your head up.
It's like playing cornhole or darts. You want to fixate on a point, typically either the pole or like a chain link. The more you fixate on it, you actually stare at it, the more likely you are going to hit it. That's like competitive cornhole players. If they're fixating on getting the sack into the actual hole on the board, they'll stare at it and more likely they're going to hit it. Same thing with darts. Fixate on the bullseye or exactly where you're aiming. As all you guys do the right mechanics, you're going to hit that bullseye most of the time, as long as you fixate on it.
This is for all the guys that play all those sports. Yes, I mean it's a cross between sports. There's no doubt about it.
Yep.
Well, I say we maybe just throw a few more because
I'm
a little tired, and now I've made a whole video of putting.
We'll work on that another time.
That'll be next. I wish I could really keep my head up. I can.
Yeah, there you go.
I can throw discs far. What do I got? I'll throw one more too that I think I'm spent. Oh, they feel so good.
Nice and toasty.
Oh man, I'm telling you, Matt, 20 years in Minnesota. This is not what it's not this weather right now in Minnesota.
No, no, absolutely not.
There you go. All right, those are pretty good shots. Well, we'll come back maybe a week or 2 weeks from now. It might be the last time that you see this handsome man's face. As I've said before on my previous video, Matthew Splain, get anything you got. If you got advertisement or you want to tell people what you're doing, give it to the camera.
Well, Steve, thank you for the opportunity, for letting me help teach you a little bit, teach you a few things over the past couple of weeks. And also want to hear a huge thank you to all my main sponsors, Flight Towel, DGD, Throw More Disc Store, Raise Energy, and also the Bass Singers Disc Golf channel on YouTube. They make some really good content, so go check them out. Also, if you go onto flighttowel.com and use the code 68281, again, that's 68281 on their website, you get 10% off of your order. And also, if you go on DGD's website, they make some really nice apparel, such as this shirt, which I absolutely love this thing to death. You can go on their site and use the code Splain, all capital 22, and you'll get 15% off of your order there as well. So again, thank you, Steve.
You're very welcome. And if you go on Kids on the Fairway, I'm giving nothing for free because well, I'm not at that point where I can give things for free. Although maybe I could send out some discs because I have tons of them. So anyway, I appreciate it. And we'll see you back here maybe in a couple weeks, which means you'll just see the other bit and we'll pretend there was 2 weeks in between because it'll only be like 5 seconds. Thanks.